Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is JC from Team Empire, and today will be the start of a new segment on the channel called Monthly Meta. As the name states, I'm going to be talking about the results over the past month for Cardfight Vanguard. I really enjoyed talking about this game competitively, and so I wanted to be able to share my thoughts and eventually the thoughts of the rest of the team on the channel. Now, seeing as we have three formats, we're splitting these videos into two. One completely devoted to standard and the other one to V and premium combined. So today's video you're watching is over V and premium. This video will be separated into two parts. The first part being results over the past month, and the second part being my predictions for the upcoming month. So for this video, it'll be predictions going into April. Please keep in mind that these are all my personal thoughts and opinions, and I just like sharing what I think about the game, which I'm sure we all do, because I love this game. So starting off, we're going to go straight into Springfest. I decided not to cover BRO because it happened at the very beginning of the month, and there's a ton of results that most people have probably already seen. And Springfest will just be more relevant in general since we're all in a team format at the moment. So we're going to start with Toronto. This was the first Springfest event of the year for V Premium. And the first place team is a very, it just makes sense, right? We have Steam Maiden, which I think every team should have if they're trying to win. Luard, and then a Leopold. All these decks are very strong right now, have a lot of really good support, or have, if you're Luard, have a lot of banned or restricted cards have come off in the past year, so that way you're able to play with very strong columns and force spam again. The second place team, we have Lock the Vanguard with Luard, Chaos, and Messiah, as well as Steam, also pretty solid. This deck is super interesting, I think, in the middle, being able to attack with Volcagodes or whatever his name is, and then also remove markers from some of the stronger decks like these two. Third place team, we have Leopold, Ange, and Steam Maidens. This lineup makes sense to me. Ange isn't as strong without things like Kutire, in my opinion, but it is still very good to have like a strong ride up. Then the fourth place team is very interesting. We have a Harry, we have a Cecilia Reverse, and a Night Rose. These guys were having a good day, because I'd say the Night Rose is the most meta relevant thing, but to not bring a Steam and still make it this far is really good. So awesome job, guys. I think I just want to look at the, actually we don't need to look at any lists. These are all pretty interesting decks on their own respect. You can look at the deck codes if you're interested any further. Next, we have California V Premium. All right, so starting this layout looks pretty different. We have the first place team, which is a Malkuth Melek, a Steam Maiden, and a Luard. So these two are the same. The Malkuth, however, is a new addition to these topping charts. I think this deck has some very high defensive plays against combo-y decks like Steam Maiden. And then they just make really big columns, I think with a guard restrict too. I believe one of their units has it. We can look at that list in a second. Then we have the second place team with Steam, Uranus, and Maelstrom. Big hype, Maelstrom hitting the list. I know my brother's a big Maelstrom fan. Third place team, we have Altmile, Chaos Breaker, and Thavis. This is the most interesting team on this layout. It's kind of like the fourth place team from the last results. It seems like these guys just brought their favorite decks and thought what they would do well with, I guess, because you don't usually see things like Altmile on these, but ups to them. Third place is a bronze. Good job. Then fourth place team is very similar to the second. We have a Steam, Leopold, and a Uranus. This one makes a little more sense compared to the second place team with the Leopold, and Uranus also makes sense because it's been doing well for a while. It's just a very strong ride-up deck that does well if it high rolls. It did well in Prism format, and I think it still does okay in Steam. So let's go ahead and look at the Malkuth list real quick before we move on. If we go to This is Toronto. Let's go ahead and jump over to San Gabriel, to V. Very pretty pie chart. Thank you, Fuzzy Paradox. And go ahead and take a look at this Malkuth list. So I know this deck is big on basically superior riding this guy and making big columns, but also in using this girl, who's not zooming in for some reason, that says you cannot call sentinels from your hand. And after you stack a bunch of protect 2s, I'm pretty sure that becomes very, very strong, because she also cannot be she also makes big numbers for just being on a protect. So very cool. Good job to the Malkuth player that made it that far with his team. Now moving on, let's get into premium. Very excited about premium. I know that a lot of people aren't enjoying this format right now, but I think there's still a lot of interesting things to talk about, starting with the first place team, which I think is probably the best team you can bring to Springfest right now. We have Steam Maiden, we have a Highlander, and a Thavis. All of these decks are ride down decks, which is kind of the the peak of this format right now. You're either a ride down deck or you're a strong ride up deck that doesn't care about your opponent being on grade 3 or grade 2. But all these decks do a very annoying thing right now that I know people are unhappy about. However, good job to this first place team. Then we have Highlander, Deleter, and Steam Maiden. Deleter's pretty interesting. I don't know the ins and outs, but we have seen results, more than one result over the past year with Deleter. Third place team, we have Gridora, Overlord, and Highlander. Very interesting third place team. Highlander makes sense. Overlord kind of makes sense because you ride up and you just pray that you hit triggers, especially like the over trigger now. Gridora is pretty rogue. If you look back into some past local tournaments, you'll see Gridora doing well. It has a lot of different builds right now that play well into decks like Spikes, play well into Bermuda somewhat, and can pretty much search anything because of cradle markers. It has a lot of builds right now, and I also think it has a lot of value going into old Gridora, the old G Gridora, because then you can basically lock down a whole column for Steam, which they are probably not happy about because it makes it harder to time leap and do multi-attack with Shlishma. Then the fourth place team, we have a Highlander, we have a Battle Sisters, and then a Nightmare Dolls and Harry split. Okay, so very interesting team. I think of the 4 teams here, I want to look at the Gridora list the most. Sorry to the Battle Sisters and the Nightmare Dolls, but we're just going to jump over there real quick. So this is in Toronto. So we're in Toronto, and here we go. It even says Cradle. So confirmed this is a Cradle build, which is very strong for a number of reasons. The first one is just being able to... Oh, interesting. Okay, so this is a surprise for me. I should have looked prior. So it seems like their main ride target is actually Darkface. Okay, so Darkface, with his cradle marker, again, you'll be able to search anything. That includes things like the old Brilliant Blister, so you have something good going into Spikes. The deck obviously has access to Giraffa grade 2, which is a very strong grade 2 game, and then this new promo, which is like absolutely crazy. It places cradle markers, it uses soul to lock stuff down. It's good for guarding. It's just like, this card is really good. So good for Gridora, has a lot of good resources right now. Moving on, for the last event we're going to be talking about, this is California Premium for Springfest. The first place team is the exact same lineup. So this is, in the eyes of the meta, this is the strongest team right now. Bringing your Highlanders team and your Thavis. Second place, Goon Squad, is bringing Gridora, Rising, and Deleter. This is a crazy team. These guys were just riding up all day and smashing face. I bet these Gridora builds are different. We're not going to look at them, but I know that one of them is a more G-centered Gridora. Then the third place team, Plot Armor, we have a Regalia, a Big Belly, and a Rising. This is crazy. Yeah, so we were having a good time in California, I guess. And then the fourth place team has a Steam, Gridora, and a Gurgit, and that's from Nexus. So good job, Nexus Core, for getting your top. It is very strange how there's only 2 Steam on this top and only 1 Highlander, but hey, I mean, the best decks don't always take all the top tables. You know, it depends on SAC, depends on how well people are feeling. There's a lot of factors, but I still think that this is a huge indication of what the best decks are right now in the format, and they're all these ride down decks. So that's it for the results. I want to move into the prediction segment now, and it's going to look a little different from the standard one if you watch that one first. We don't have any product releases coming up next month for V or Premium, but something that we probably do have is a restriction list coming for English. Usually those restriction lists come 2 weeks after Japan's. And so what we can do right now is predict what our meta will be if we see the same hits that we don't have yet on our restriction list. So if we start with V, the middle one happened to us already with the Gear Colossus being banned. It was one of the reasons why Steam was as powerful as it was. You know, without it, it lowered its ceiling. But the most interesting thing on here is that Meep is no longer restricted, which means we probably will see a rise in Melody, which some people aren't happy about. I think it's fine because overall it will shift the format around a bit. Like, we might start seeing less rogue picks, knowing that Bermuda is going to be coming back maybe with a vengeance. And I already see a lot of people selling or buying out Melody on Facebook. So if we see that hit, I definitely think Melody will rise back into the format. And then we look at Premium. Now, Premium has more to talk about for sure. If we're looking at these 3 right here, we have the Full Bronto, the Bird from Nubatama, and Spangled. These hits look like they're preparing for History Collection, which English doesn't have until the summer. Now, that's a whole nother discussion, but those 3 hits are basically preparing for all the new superior striding that we're going to be doing with all the old G units and all the old strides. Then this is catching up with our restriction list with the piano, but same thing goes for Stunverse, but in my opinion, the most impactful thing on here is this Steam Maiden's main ride target being banned. Okay, so what does this mean for the meta? This means that you are taking the easiest ride down deck, and I don't mean easy to play, I just mean literally the card says you get to ride down to grade 2 after you use its superior ride. So it has the least amount of steps to get the ride down against certain decks when you ride with this card, meaning that the best ride down deck after this is probably either Highlander or Thavis. So at this point, players need to make a decision, right? Because Steam is still good. Steam's still going to plus a bunch. You're going to get to ride up. You're going to get to do crazy things. If you get to stride, you'll get to Shlishma and still do all the things that the deck does. Plus, you no longer have to play grade 4s in the deck, which means you can add more consistency. You don't have to play the Time Leaper Dragon or whatever his name is. But players need to decide now if they still value the full commitment to the ride down game in trying to see their results. Like, are people still going to bring Highlander? Yes, because Highlander is very strong. However, what about those other 2 slots? Are we still going to try to make or break the format based on ride down? If we do, then I think people will more than likely, the players that value the ride down, replace the Steam deck with Nightmare Dolls. Nightmare Dolls never really saw a hit outside of the Harry Stride, which everyone laughed at because it didn't do anything to the deck. And even though its ride down isn't the easiest to complete, it's still very strong. You can still play Rollock, and you still get a crazy amount of attacks once you reach your Dark Lord Princess. So that's definitely something to think about. I think Nightmare Dolls might come back into the format now that Steam is gone, because that's one less force deck, and we know that they're all over the place right now. But we might also just see more people bringing their lists that ride up and do okay now that there's one less deck that rides down and also pluses a billion. But keep in mind, Steam will not completely leave the format, in my opinion, because the deck still has Enterana and the Gear Cat and can just plus a bunch of cards and still just have a strong ride up and survive. Now, I think people freaked out the most about Katrina, and I'm going to be a bit controversial. While Katrina is scary, and I know back in 2019 she was just ripping the format to shreds, I think this is not fine, but very interesting. I'm glad that Bushiroad is starting to be a little more influential with their ban list, rather than just waiting for the last second to cut something that everyone has wanted. Because with Steam Maiden gone, you can either just let the format lower down into what the other best decks are, or you can shake it up a bit by adding something like Katrina. Now, do I think a complete unrestriction is good? Probably not. However, it is a new threat and a way to completely change the format. They say, okay, we're going to take away all this stuff, but we're going to kind of mix up the strongest decks with what could potentially be the new best deck with Katrina. But keep in mind, Katrina, you have to reach stride. So Katrina, Neo Nectar is going to be competing against ride down decks if we get this unrestriction. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, Katrina's scary, but I think it might be a great way to try and change the meta before we get to History Collection. Anyway, thank y'all for listening so much. I really hope that my commentary was deep enough for some of our veteran viewers and informative enough for people that may not know about the format. Please, if you haven't watched our standard video yet, I would highly recommend watching that, since standard has a lot of exciting things going on right now. Also in the future, I will have a guest for my monthly meta videos on every single one, people from the team, and then maybe just other players that I know in the community. That way they can add their commentary as well. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. What predictions do you have about the upcoming month or months ahead going into V and Premium? Thank you for watching. Bye.